Welcome to the WangHiro podcast, where we answer Malaysians' burning questions about personal finance with fact-based answers. Apple is one of the most well-known brands in the world. Most people own at least one Apple device. I personally own three: an iPhone, a MacBook, and an iPad. It's one of the most valued companies in the world, worth about $2.7 trillion today, one of only 6 companies in the world. In this video, we're asking, is it worth it to invest in Apple now? Welcome back to Stock Investing from Zero on WangHiro, our weekly series where we put a beginner's lens on companies and help you decide if you should invest in it. So John, put your beginner's lens on Apple and help us decide if we should invest in it.
Okay. I used to be. I have a joke with people last time. It's like the Star Wars.
Okay.
If you join Apple, you went into the dark side. You're done. You can't
That's
come
true,
back.
that's true. That's true. My
Yeah.
friend always says that about me. I used to not really buy that much Apple after I started to run my own business. You know, in agency work, you have to have like Apple because everything gets released on OS first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, the decision. Allow me to share just a quick snippet. I bought my Mac. I was like so adamant not to buy a MacBook because I said it's an overpriced, shiny, glossy thing, right? What
Okay.
changed my mind was the M1 and M2 chips when they first came out. And I had a spec'd out Windows piece, laptop. And when I was doing a live video feed of a book launch, Casey Chong's book launch,
Okay.
the whole video lagged.
Oh.
And I'm like, at that day, I made a decision. Screw it. You know, I need to get a powerful laptop. And I looked around. A fully spec'd out Windows laptop would have cost double of a MacBook Pro.
Yep.
So,
it's the chip also, you know, because of how optimized M1 and M2 chips are, the M series anyway.
yeah.
They're probably the cheapest ones for that power, you know, and
Exactly.
the smallest.
Yeah, and I didn't even need a dedicated NVIDIA graphics card. I just get an M2 chip, M1 Pro chip. I bought a MacBook Pro, and that's it. You know, I'm done. You know, it's like it renders half the time. It never lags, right?
It just works, is what I would say.
Works, right?
It just works, and no viruses.
Correct. Okay. So, I guess today we're looking at a lot of negative news coming out of especially China. Two things. One, do you know Apple is actually completely banned in China right now? If you've
Is it? Oh, I when did it happen?
Yeah, just last week. Okay. They're going to ban. Okay, and it coincides also almost simultaneously with the Huawei Mate Pro 60 launch, which is quite big news because what has happened is that US has placed a lot of sanctions on manufacturing in China, especially SMIC, Shanghai Manufacturing, right? And they thought that these sanctions will actually prevent SMIC from building like a 5 nanometer, 7 nanometer chip, right? But that has actually failed because Huawei launched this phone, and a dissection of this phone actually proved that they could manufacture at 7 nano even without ASML lithography tools. And at the same time, coinciding with, you know, Apple's ban in China, you know, people were like saying, okay, obviously I don't agree with the entire hypothesis. They said that Apple's share will be taken over by Huawei. I said no. Once you're in the Apple ecosystem, you're stuck with it. People may even resort to buying like gray phones smuggled into China, or even like older phones, because I love the Apple ecosystem. Once I'm in it, right, I'm like, wow, it's crazy, right? But this actually, it's a beauty for a lot of, if you are a value investor, because the more negative the sentiment it is, and the more the price is being beaten down, it's actually a chance for you to get a bargain. Now, I'll share with you my story of how I've been an Apple investor since 2016, somewhere there, right? And why I bought during that time was because Apple was selling at a PE of 16 times.
Whoa.
16.
Wow.
And I don't know if you remember, there was a time when Steve Jobs just passed away, Tim Cook took over, and then Sir Jony Ive, which we're going to talk about later, is in the book, okay, that we're going to recommend. They were saying that Apple will lose its luster because Steve Jobs has passed away. There's no more creativity, right? Tim Cook is a robot. He's an operational guy. He will not bring Apple to the next level. And who's having the last laugh is Tim Cook.
Yeah. I mean, like after that, they launched the earbuds, all these series of M1, M2 chip.
Exactly. You know the M1 is developed in secrecy for 10 years?
No.
Yeah. And actually the story behind it was, the story behind it is very simple. Tim Cook actually approached Intel at that time, I can't remember his first name, but the Intel CEO, the last name was Ortonelli, or Ortonelli, I think. Yeah, and he actually asked that, can you build chips for us? Can you build chips for the mobile? I don't know whether it was Tim Cook now or Steve Jobs, but either one of them actually asked Intel, can you build the chips for us? And Intel actually said no. So because of that, that happened like many years ago. That's why Apple had to build their own chip. And Apple was forced to build their own chip, small crack team. And today, that's why over 10 years, 11 years, they were toiling in the background. And today you have the M1 and M2. So beginner's lens now. Let's look at the 4 questions that we normally run through. Is what do they do? And how do they make money? Are they profitable and financially stable doing it? And who is the audience? How big can they grow? And last but not least, are they cheap and expensive? So I bought them cheap. I was very lucky, right? So what does Apple do? I think this one doesn't need much introduction. I mean, their branding, their marketing on advertisements, you know what they do. But a lot of people think they're an iPhone company. But what do you think about it?
Personally, I think it's like a whole like I would say like the ecosystem, but I don't know what do you call that.
Actually, it's a lifestyle company.
Lifestyle company.
You think about it.
I never thought of it as a lifestyle company actually.
So they're in every nuance that you have. You talk about air tags. You know, I'm like thinking, how can a phone company create air tags? It's because of the technology they've developed in wireless, and you know AirTags, right? The one you put into your bag, and then right. Then you think about how the iPhone has actually developed those SOS sensors. If you have a fall, and then elderly parents actually have an emergency call to the emergency services, and and all that. So you see, right? They are there not to create products for technology's sake. They are there to create products that help you better your lifestyle.
Oh, that's a very interesting take. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, so it's like
Apple
why
TV and all that. Yeah,
correct. You talk about their Apple Pay. What is it? It's convenience for payment. It's technology, but technology to better your lifestyle. Right? Like you talk about your intuitiveness. Is actually, I love a lot of Steve Jobs quotes. I said, if your phone needs a manual, the product has failed.
True. I love that about there was like this thing where he used to build phones that were not too big. Like my Max is so big that like you can't really run just using one finger anymore. But that was one of the he also like tried to do at one point. Yeah.
Correct. And you realize they're not like Samsung. I even lost count of how many models they have. They have the J series, they have the S series, they have the Galaxy series.
What's going on
they
now?
They wanted to cater for everyone. And when you want to cater for everyone, that's where you're giving customers who may not know what they want, right? But thinking that you're serving every need. Apple just have like, prior to the SE, right? Apple only had like 2 flagship models. It's either a Pro or a normal one. That's it, right? You see? So what did they do and how do they make money? It used to be an iPhone company, airport company, whatever. For me, my argument today is they're a lifestyle company. I mean, you think about you have to pay for iTunes today. You have to pay for a lot of other ancillary services, right? Okay, air tags and all that kind of thing. And they have outgrown that of just a device company. That's my argument. Okay, how do they make money? Obviously, every time they sell a device, they make money. Every time they actually get a new subscriber that pays a recurring fee for the subscription, they also make money. So, second, are they profitable and financially stable doing that? So let's look at ticker right now. Okay, let's look at ticker. I'm going to put in Apple. Today market cap is 2.7 trillion. It's insane, right? I mean, like just a few years ago they were in the billions, but now
imagine that. I didn't think it would happen actually so fast.
Correct. Actually, it's not too bad. 27 times. Okay, we'll talk about valuations later, but let's look at the finances first. So let me plot. Okay.
Nothing beats your 16 times, John.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I mean, that's when you really. I wish I had more money to swing at that point of time. I was complaining it was expensive, but anyway. So lesson learned. Look at the gross margins. I'm going to share with you an insight, right? why do I like to look at gross margins is because this is where a company showcase their pricing power. The higher the gross margins and an increase in gross margins means they can increase their prices and cost remains the same. Because input costs will also rise with inflation, but they can actually increase even higher than the cost of inflation and pass it on to the client.
Wow.
You see? So like a single number, but it can give you a lot of different nuances, you see? So, gross margins is increasing. And I'll tell you why once we go down to the segment, okay? So profitability, no need to say lah. Can you imagine 2016 until 2021, okay, 2022, they used to make 45 million net income. Today they make 99. That's double, It's crazy. It's more than double in terms of profitability, okay? And best part, the number of iPhones being sold is decreasing. Since 2021, they don't publish the number of phones being sold anymore. That's an interesting fact about Apple. People will still try to reverse engineer and all that kind of thing, but yeah, since 2021, they have officially stopped publishing the number of iPhones being sold because they're no longer just an iPhone company, right?
Right. Yeah, that's no longer the only benchmark.
Yeah. A lot of people used to like predict the profitability based on number of units sold and all that kind of thing, but I think that's the wrong way of looking at Apple. Okay, cash flow from operations, yeah, it's fantastic, even higher than net profit. Okay, so in terms of finance wise, okay, if I'm not mistaken, it's a net cash company. Let me double check. Okay, yeah, they are a net cash company actually. Yeah, so I think the struggle for most net cash company is this: should they divide it and return it to shareholders as dividend, or should they start expanding their business? But what to expand to? You see, there's always a struggle because cash being set at the side, you will actually like shareholders will question you why you keep so much cash.
Yeah, I mean, if you just keep cash as cash, right? I mean, that's depreciating, right?
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's always a struggle because you will be tempted to actually spend that kind of money and Apple didn't used to pay dividend, Louis, way back then. Yeah. Actually, one of the main reasons why Buffett actually bought into Apple was because they started paying dividends. Prior to that, they didn't really.
Yeah, correct. So I think I remember reading in Snowball or something like that. He insists on that, right?
Correct.
That's like what you deserve as an investor to him.
Yeah. And also one thing, I think Buffett is not unpractical or unreasonable. The reason why he demanded that dividend because he knew that the free cash flow being generated from Apple was more than enough for reinvestment and still have leftover for dividend. So that's why he insisted that you need to bring money back to Berkshire. Right? Okay, so last but not least, the fourth question is, and the third question, I haven't answered the third one. Who's their audience and how big can they grow? Virtually mobile phones around the world. I mean, like if I were to try to find a total addressable market, so I would say total mobile phones.
Except China now, right?
Yeah. But I tell you, it's temporarily. I think, sooner
I
or
think
later.
I read that they deny that. I just saw that. I don't know.
Yeah, they deny that, Apple is being banned, is it?
Yeah, they deny, but who knows?
Okay, 1.3 billion sold. Apple dominating yearly sales of 253 units with 24% market share. So it's still being. I'm surprised Samsung didn't win them though. But this was updated when 2022, so should be quite recently. Yeah. Combined, all mobile phones have shipped 19 billion units between 1994 to 2018. It's 20 billion phones, Louis. I cannot imagine the landfills that are filled by old phones.
Yeah. I mean, to think about that waste is a whole other like episode.
Exactly.
And that many people have several phones these days.
Yep.
Right. Like I have two. Like so, a lot. Like my parents each have three.
Oh my gosh! What did they do with 3 phones?
Just keep the old phone. I mean, at least it's not going to a landfill, right? Like keep the old phones. So yeah. My dad is like that. Yeah.
And
so
I'm only looking at one angle.
It's also like the young people coming in, right? I mean, to use phones.
Correct. And I'm only looking at one angle for the addressable market because I've not talked about their cloud solutions. I've not talked about uh,
Ah,
their software solutions. Okay. I've not even talked about, okay, so they have now broken down kind of like into probably 5 different categories. It's the iPhones, and then the Mac, and then the iPad, and then the wearable home and accessories. So like your speakers or your wearable devices or your Apple Watch or your AirPods, whatever. And obviously the last one is services. Okay. So in 2022, roughly iPhone brought in about 205 billion of their revenue. Mac brought in about 40 billion. So there's only a quarter. So iPhones is still the king of the hill, right? iPad brought in roughly half of the Mac's 29 billion. Wearables, this is where it's interesting. Wearables is growing year on year. It's roughly about 41 billion today. And services has grown substantially. I mean, in 2019, they had about 42 billion. No, sorry, 46 billion in services. Now they are roughly about 78 billion. So they kind of like almost doubled their services revenue segment. So that kind of business model evolution is great because remember I told you about the gross margins just now? Because services will give you a higher margin compared to hardware. Because it's a lot of it is software services that can be delivered. It can be scaled very easily without increasing your costs, things like that.
no supply chain management required as well.
Yes. And then now they are diversifying because of the trade war. They're diversifying a lot of what Foxconn is doing to India. It's going to cost them in the beginning because the ecosystem is not built and it's not scalable, it's not as efficient. But I think they'll get there actually, Tim Cook was a master at all this. That's how he got promoted to where he is because he was a master of the procurement of supply chain, the operations of the company. He was a fantastic executive, like a drill sergeant, right? And he led the creative teams. Obviously, he had loggerheads because Steve is more the blank canvas creative guy, But at the same time, you need financial, at the size of Apple, you need the kind of financial discipline from Tim Cook to be able to, double the revenue and all these kind of things. That's how I'd argue it. Okay. Last but not least, are they cheap or expensive? So we go to valuations. Price to sales or creeping up a little bit, 6.8 times. Let's look at all. Wow, it's creeping up a little bit. Price to earnings. So let's look at a 10-year mean. They're a little bit on the high side. I think this is where I bought it, 2016. Yeah, somewhere here. Oh, it's even cheaper now looking back. Wow, okay. This last 12 months, correct. Somewhere here, I remember buying it for about 16 times now, right? So look at it where it is today. It's roughly about 30 times, okay, last 12 months trailing. But if you're talking about forward, it's about 30 times as well. Okay, yeah. So next 12 months is a forward valuation projection, 27 times. Last 12 months, about 29 times. So a little bit on the high side if you look at the 10-year average. The peak was obviously during the COVID times, right? Actually
I mean, everyone saw a peak back then. So that's Apple, right?
Correct. Euphoria, you've got stimulus money in Malaysia, you got the iCitra money, EPF withdrawal. Everyone was betting into the market, right? That's where it goes crazy. But that's the worst time to buy, actually, to be honest, right? Yeah. So in terms of what do they do? How do they make money? I think it's clear. Profitability, obviously. Net cash company. In terms of the audience size, is global. I think everyone, even a 5-year-old kid in China, know what's a Pingguo phone. I'm pretty sure. All right. Obviously, the TAM is just limitless, I mean, in Africa, once the affluency cohort gets bigger and bigger, I'm pretty sure they'll move over to Apple as well, right? Are they cheap or expensive? A little bit more on the expensive side in terms of valuation wise for this round.
So one question I have is around because we just ended the big event, right, where they announced the iPhone 15, and interestingly they have actually removed the lightning cable. I think because of some restrictions, right? For you.
European, yeah, they wanted, universal
Well,
cable.
thankfully, they've done that because, like, wow, I mean, if you lost I think that lightning cable will cost like 99 ringgit. The short one. I remember buying a couple. I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's expensive compared to normal USB-C cable. Probably a fraction of that price. So my question is like, John, is there a better time to buy into Apple than now? Because now we're just fresh off the event. Should we wait? Should we wait? Because like there's some exciting news that came out. Everyone might have bought in. Price have increased because of that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think every time there's hype and euphoria, you're talking about the Magnificent Seven. They keep on talking about the Magnificent Seven on Nasdaq, right? Whenever there's hype and euphoria, actually, I try to apply the brakes a little bit, because what you want is you want to buy when the market is pessimist. It's a great company, right? It's a great company. It produces great product, but what makes a difference between a good investment and a good company is this: a good company may be very expensive, but a lousy investment at that point of time. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Good company, but because it's severely overvalued, it may be a bad investment.
Right company, wrong time, basically.
Yes, correct. There's no harm nibbling, like, let's say you allocate. This is comes back to the discipline of portfolio allocation again. There's no harm putting in like 30% of your allocation for that stock. Let's say you decided to put 10% of your entire portfolio into Apple, right? And out of that 10%, there's no harm putting 1, 2 to even 3%, and you see where the price goes from there. Okay. The remaining 70%, you should actually like be a little bit more patient. When the market is less euphoric, that's when you should average down your cost and all that kind of thing. Because when you're buying at a high, what happens is you don't have a margin of safety. And that is exactly what makes a good investment. You find a great company, you want to buy it at 50 cents to the dollar, or even better, 20 cents on the dollar, and you have that kind of margin of safety, and then you wait. But if you're buying at a high, what happens is that you already lose that margin of safety, and you need to have things going in your favor so that you can make money. That means everything needs to turn out well for your company. But you don't leave any margin for error, even for Apple to make some blunders or mistakes, which we know in a business is inevitable. There will be some blunders. There will be some products that are misfired, whatever. And that's why the importance of margin of safety. I hope I'm making sense to you, Louis.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we definitely need that kind of big margin of safety just to comfort ourselves as well, right?
Yes,
Actually,
exactly.
buying it at a higher price and then going down a little bit, I think it will scare you, and sometimes that loss aversion kicks in, and you sell it when it's too expensive. Actually,
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So I think that wraps up our stock investing analysis section. Any buyers of Apple in our audience out there? So if you are an investor in Apple, comment down in the section. Comment below. Why are you still keeping Apple? What do you think about our analysis? Is it accurate? What do you agree? What do you not agree? Now, let's move on to our last section, which is an investing book recommendation. So I included this section just because I wanted to know a little bit more about investing, and I hope that John can introduce us some beginner books. So if you're a beginner, so stay tuned. Recommend us the investing book now, John.
Okay. So the beauty about investing is that you don't need to necessarily read an investing book to be a good investor. Actually, to be a good investor, you should read as widely as possible. And I think a lot of people mistakenly think that you should only read about Buffett, Munger, and all these investors to become better investors. No, actually, the better you become as an investor is when you read as wide as possible. And actually, the best books to read are, for me, biographies. Because you get a lot of insight to the person running the show, the founder. How does he run? He will explain to you the difficulties of the industry. Like there's a book which I'll leave it for the next one. It's talking about the cable industry in the US, and it's already high on my reading list because if you look at how the cable industry actually evolved into linear networks and all that kind of, it's very interesting. But to stick it to Apple, I thought that I would introduce this guy called Sir Jony Ive. I don't know if you heard of him before.
Yep.
Yeah, he was the chief designer. He was the guy that the rumor has it. Yeah, before he left.
Yep.
He was actually, rumor was it that he had lunch with Steve Jobs almost every day if Jobs was around. and he was the genius behind, you know, creating Apple's greatest products like the AirPods and things like that, right? So a little bit about the book. He was actually a very shy, soft-spoken wizard. Um, Steve Jobs used to call him his spiritual partner because
Oh, okay.
Steve Jobs, like, it's a very blank space, creative. You know, Steve Wozniak, the other co-founder of Apple, was a bit more of the tech genius, a more systematic guy, right? And Steve was always tasked with the more creative side, marketing and all that kind of thing. And I think that is what he shared with Sir Jony Ive, right? Um, this particular book actually portrayed the creative genius of Johnny. He was a dyslexic. Okay, I didn't know that, right? I just found out about it after reading the book. He was dyslexic. He had immense insights to how people perceive things, how people use things. Okay, he had a very early interest in industrial design, and his father was actually a designer himself. And
Oh,
the funny thing about it is, Louis, is this: we, in an earlier episode this week, we talked about polytechnic education or TVET education, right? And he actually came through that kind of education. He went
oh.
through a polytechnic. He was in Newcastle Polytechnic, okay? And he discovered a lot of uh, styles, creativity methods, that principles and practices that actually led him to develop certain things, which was some of the best products designed in our generation today. So I think it's a good read. I think you want to see how in the book also he details how the inner workings of Apple when Steve Jobs was still around. I don't think the culture has changed too much after Jobs left and Cook is running it. But again, it gives us like how they think as a lifestyle company, as how they think and design products for us, you know, in encompassing this lifestyle theme.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting because like I think in the like a very good read next to this would probably be Steve Jobs' own biography, right? Where he attended he dropped into some calligraphy classes. I especially liked his ideologies around like what he sees is like designed very well.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So that wraps up today's episode. Did you guys enjoy it? If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up to help us with the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content around investing and personal finance, make sure to subscribe to WangHiro. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Make sure to, I'll see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.